Yeah, you're very welcome along to this Tuesday night. We have a packed show today. We're going to talk cycling, and if you're not interested in cycling, you might just be interested in somebody from Eritrea winning a stage at the Giro. It's a really, really crazy story, and the drama didn't end actually after the race, as we will soon discuss with Cathal Mullaney here. Later on, we'll be joined by Michael Duignan to discuss 12,500 people watching Offaly v Laois in the Leinster Hurling Championship minor final last night in Portlaoise. Big win for Offaly, and I imagine Michael will be quite passionate about that, and the chairperson of the Offaly County Board now. We'll also be joined by Cathal Dennehy, who will be talking about Irish athletics. A very interesting article in the Examiner today. All is not rosy despite some recent successes, and then we will have Graham Hunter talking a little bit of football later on in the show. So we have a packed show coming up tonight. How are you, Cathal?
I'm very well, Johnny. How are you?
I'm good. How was your weekend been?
Good.
How was it into the week?
Yeah, good, yeah. GA focused weekends, obviously now with the championship in full swing, and we've got a whopper of a sporting weekend coming up. Not this weekend, the weekend after. We've got the Heineken Champions Cup, the Champions League final on that Saturday, 4 provincial finals in the GA.
Go United Cork City.
And
massive
I was
clash.
just getting to that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a great time of year, isn't it?
Well, I mean, if you're from Westmeath, it's a good time to be from Westmeath, I think. Adrian Barry, it's a particularly good time to be a Westmeath hurling fan.
Yeah, amazing. How are you, lads? How are you keeping?
Hey, Adrian.
Yeah, look at Carl Sligo man, and you probably less so, Johnny, given you've had plenty of fortunes over the last few years. You've plenty to crow about. We probably have less so, and definitely, I mean, as surprising as anything. I watched the highlights on the Sunday game on Sunday night.
Great commentator, actually.
Great commentator,
really good.
Great commentator.
Yeah.
And I can't be too critical. It just strikes me of the package now, given who's in our company. But it was a shame that there wasn't full-on cameras there to get a proper view of it. Like and Carl probably had a hand in this. Obviously, they were showing a lot of replays because it was hard to see what was happening with the first run of the scores because of the quality of the cameras or whatever. But look, and there was a couple of, from what you could tell, a couple of fairly, we'll call them fortuitous goals. And look, it all helps. And the manager was making the point afterwards that it'll be all for nothing unless they do the job against a team they should be doing the job against next weekend against Laois. So, but look, here, we'll take whatever's going. I was at Crow Park on Sunday, and we will happily take whatever's going, Johnny, on the basis of that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it might be all for nothing, Carl, but it's still, like, if you were there, that's a momentous occasion. Like, Galway got a draw against Wexford. Westmeath did the exact same thing a few weeks later, and you have a veteran then, like, nabbing the goal, basically the last puck.
Yeah, absolutely. The manner of the draw as well was just remarkable with that long ball in and Derek McNicholas getting the final touch into the net. But I think Adrian's right. I mean, if you were to ask Westmeath at the start of the campaign if it's a case of retaining their Liam McCarthy status or pulling a big result and getting relegated, I think they definitely want to retain their status. So it comes down to this weekend. But it's great for the promotion of hurling in that county, and it gives a great lift because it shows that they're capable of competing at the top level with the bigger counties. And obviously Wexford were one of the form teams in the country earlier on in the season under Dara Egan in the league. And then you see last night with the Leinster minor hurling final, the crowd that was at that between Laois and Offaly, and that further illustrates the power of the game, I guess, in that part of the country.
Like last night, Adrian, we'll talk about it with Michael Duignan, but 12,500 people of a Monday, and possibly even more unofficially there at a hurling game between Laois and Offaly, and how long both counties were starved for success even at minor level.
Yeah, absolute class. I think the Offaly footballers as well, and for their haircuts apart from anything else, have done a lot to capture the imagination of the GA sporting public over the last 12 months. And like, I don't know if you saw the footage afterwards, but they were in the dressing room singing whatever the Offaly anthem was.
The Offaly Rover.
Was it the Offaly Rover? It wasn't the most sort of rousing rendition, I'm not going to lie to you, Johnny, that I've ever seen. It was missing a bit of oomph about it or something, but Michael Duignan was in there and he was definitely giving it talks, and like, look at the job that he's done. He seems to just gone in there with like none of the baggage of maybe a lot of people that find themselves in those positions in terms of, it's never going to be the highlight of Michael Duignan's sporting career, let's face it, like when he's achieving the game and his profile and all that sort of stuff, and he seems to have gone in there with a clean slate. And you listen to Tomás O'Shea was on OTB AM during the week last week, and he was talking about, when the call comes through, like even Michael Duignan having it's not quite bravery, but cojones to pick up the phone to Tomás O'Shea and say, here, listen, we've got something special going on here. We think you might be able to add something to it. What do you think? Like, it's just a very impressive individual. And I don't know, look, he's been there relatively short time in terms of the success that's coming now at underage grade. So he'll probably tell you himself later on that he's not necessarily going to take a huge amount of credit for that. But certainly the structures, I think there's loads of teams, including our own, that could take a bit of a leaf out of that book.
Yeah, the news round is brought to you with Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. How does somebody from Sligo get into hurling? How do you spread the gospel around? Hurling is at once the greatest sport in the world in many respects. It's also, not even like globally, but within Ireland, it's totally underspread. So how do we change that?
Well, from a Sligo point of view, Sligo have been on a really upward trajectory. And
managed by Ballygarman.
That's right, yeah, and they're in the Christy Ring Cup now. And I think Lara McCarthy, the GA president, has been talking about obviously the Tailteann Cup in recent days and that potential of that competition to revitalise certain counties and to get a run at a time of the year when the GA is really in the national mindset, I guess, and to play in Croke Park and big summer days. And the tiered championships in hurling have definitely done that, in that there's definitely a defined path for counties to progress. They have to acknowledge the certain level that they're at a certain stage in their development. We've mentioned awfully, their minor hurling success last night, but they've fallen down the grades at senior level. But they do see a path to get back to where they should be, which is at the upper end, and they've done so in the league and in the tiered championship system as well. And there's no doubt about it that the opportunity to play in Croke Park in your Nicky Rackard finals and your Christy Ring Cup finals definitely is something that younger hurlers in counties that aren't so-called traditional hurling counties can aspire to. So that's a way forward. And I know there's a huge amount of coaching work obviously going on as well.
So Ken McStay had a very interesting article today in the Times about this, Adrian, just about the Tailteann Cup, and it's not necessarily getting off to a great start in terms of some aspects of the draw and promotion and so on and so forth, but And this has been said before, at club level, if you win a junior title, if you win an intermediate title, it means so much to the club involved. It doesn't matter necessarily that it's not senior. And I don't see why inter-county can't go the same way and give something for counties to actually fight for. Because this nonsense about the provincial romance of the provincial system, I mean, the provincial system has been obsolete for years.
I think that you certainly, like, listening to players from counties over the last 20 years who wouldn't have been within an arse's roar been able to win the All-Ireland title, like talking about how they always wanted to set out the year with some sort of a vested interest in Sam Maguire. It's been clear for a long period of time that system wasn't right, and that something needed to be done with it, and that probably the decisions around it needed to be taken out of the hands of active teams, because what else are they going to say, even though they know it's not right ultimately? What else are they going to say? Whether the Tailteann Cup is exactly the answer to that, we really don't know yet, and there are concerns about it. I think that's fair enough. I saw there was some chat today about the timing of it and whether it should be before the All-Ireland final, and the GA president was saying, well, look,
I actually don't, to be honest. I think, I
agree.
Because there's too much of demand. So if Dublin and Mayo are playing an All-Ireland final, for example, how do you throw in another game, any other game on top of the senior level?
I would totally agree. And look, as we know, they can sell that game out, and that has to be looked at. I know there's been plenty of conversations on this channel and others over the last 48 hours as well. That has to be a factor, obviously, in terms of trying to be able to bring in that money, and that's fair enough. I also think, Johnny, I think that, for one of the biggest conversations around the Tailteann Cup at the minute is, teams' abilities to be able to keep players involved now that they're out of the championship. So, what can Westmeath do to keep players involved now? The draw's been made, obviously, and that maybe focuses minds a little bit. They can't go and if they wanted to go to the US, they can't go and play with other clubs officially anyway. So the Tailteann Cup final will be 2 weeks before the All-Ireland, and for me that makes sense. You can nearly say, look, maybe you couldn't run it off any quicker than that, but it probably does make sense to get it run off. It doesn't have the promise of the All-Ireland. You're going back to your squad and saying, right, let's give this a bash now for the next 2 months or whatever the case might be. And I think you will get buy-in on that basis. There's so much. There's been a lot of criticism of it. We just don't know. We'll see what happens over the next couple of months. If a team that goes full bore into it and is speaking very positively about it and is playing really well, goes ahead and win the thing, and that'll be a bit of a benchmark for everybody else. But if you end up with a load of teams who've players that have just sort of decided they don't want in and they've better things to do with their lives, if you end up with a huge narrative around that sort of stuff, it can get away from you quickly.
Yeah, and we've seen that with Down as well, and it's actually Down were
featuring
in it's interesting, Colin, because inter-county for years and years and years, you played for your club, you represented the county, but it wasn't the professionalism it is now, where basically it takes over your life.
Yeah.
You need an end goal in the summer. You need to be playing football in the summer at some level for your county.
Yeah, and that's the opportunity that the Tailteann Cup provides to so many players. And you mentioned Down, that the initial mood music from Down wasn't great in terms of the Tailteann Cup, but I read some quotes from their captain yesterday, and I think they've come around to the idea of playing in it. And also the fact, like, I think the Tailteann Cup has a huge amount of potential for a number of reasons, but particularly from next year when it gets into the round robin and there are groups and teams get a couple of games at the height of summer against opposition of a similar level. And one of the most important things for counties is, weaker counties, is in recent years they're knocked out of the championship early and they're done, whereas the stronger counties have 2 or 3 months extra together where they can train, they can develop
and improve
a style of play in good weather. So this gives teams to do that. And I think for counties, for example, that maybe don't play in Croke Park every year or every 5 years or every 10 years, if they get to a semi-final, for example, in the Tailteann Cup, they get to play in Croke Park, they get on a bit of a run, they can take that momentum into the following year. The management team can say, well, we've got something here to build on, and then that's how you build up. And if you feel you're good enough to get into the All-Ireland Series and into the Sam Maguire Championship, you have got a clear defined pathway to get into it. So I think definitely, given the early indications from most of the managers and most of the panels, I think the Tailteann Cup has a huge amount of potential, and I think it should be given an opportunity this year to thrive in the space that it's in, and then we can assess after the competition is held where it's at and how it can
give it
can
time
improve.
as
Exactly.
well. Give it time, and I think we need to see more relevant games between counties of a similar standard and bring them to Croke Park and showcase their talent. We want to show you a photo here. This is from the final stage of the Giro today, if we have it, the Giro d'Italia, where history was made. So this is the winner, Biniam Garma. He's the first black African cyclist to win a stage at any of essentially the major tournaments, and as he's crossing the line, the Dutch cyclist who finished second, I'll get his name now, who was a young Dutch cyclist, essentially puts up his thumb to celebrate with him, Matthew van der Poel, after this really, really epic finish. Really, and a lot of the time when you watch cycling, Cathal, I think the camera angle at the finish is awful. Like, it's like watching a horse race head on. You haven't the clues in front. But Garma was in front, so he's from Eritrea. Now, I had to check up on this today. Eritrea is basically the North Korea of Africa. It's a really, really autocratic regime where everyone's enlisted into the military and so on. Very, very poor, broke away from Ethiopia in the 80s or 90s. But it's the mecca for cycling in Africa. And so Biniam Garma, he's really emotional afterwards, and then to add even more layers to the story, he unpops the champagne and the cork hits him in the eye and he has to go to hospital. I did not make any of this up.
It is, that is true. It is a bizarre story in many ways, but it is a good news story, isn't it? In terms of his breakthrough to win stage 10, isn't it, of the Giro d'Italia today. But the finish you mentioned, I thought that was a lovely gesture from the
Matthew van der Poel,
because you're just so exhausted at that stage, and he had exerted so much energy obviously to try and win, and he knew the significance of the moment to give the little bit of a thumbs up and let Biniam Garma have his moment. And
it's always kind of it's bemusing me looking at cycling, Adrian, how it's so white centric and you don't get many black cyclists effectively, and I'm sure there are a myriad of reasons for that, but to have like people in Eritrea have sporting heroes like this guy, it's just amazingly profound, I think.
I'd love to know why, in a country that is so poor, one of the poorest countries in the world, and one-man dictatorship that's been in place since 1993 with no elections.
The best dictatorships.
And no independent judicial system, like obviously clearly a despot regime. How is cycling flourishing so much? It's as popular, if not more popular, than football and athletics, and I really have no idea as to why. I will need to do a bit of reading post that, but why a sport like cycling would thrive so much. And he's by far by no stretch the first professional cyclist to come out of the country either. He it seems like he's on a real he won a classic in Belgium back in March, first black African to win a classic. We've spoken about really well to him, but reading about him this afternoon. Good sprinter, tactically aware, like with a bit of a future. Like, it doesn't seem like this is just an outlier result. And hopefully, like you say, like, look, I would like to know why Eritrea is putting such an emphasis on cycling.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? Like, for such a poor
Apparently, Asmara just has a lot of bicycles, and it obviously has the road network to actually support it, which I guess is probably an issue in a lot of African cities where, as well as maybe, poverty in a lot of cities, it's just the road network necessarily isn't there, or the culture. But it really, if you can watch the Giro back on Eurosport later, it's fantastic watch. You don't have to have any interest in cycling. What's in the news?
Well, let's start, Johnny, with tonight's football action. And Liverpool can close the gap to Premier League leaders Manchester City to a single point with one game left to go in the Premier League season. Jurgen Klopp's side are at St Mary's for a meeting with Southampton. Liverpool, of course, go into that game off the back of their win over Chelsea in the FA Cup final at the weekend. And Jurgen Klopp believes their Wembley triumph takes the pressure off as they chase Premier League and Champions League titles over the coming weeks.
We feel the responsibility as a team of Liverpool FC that we have to win trophies. So it feels much better that we won already, to be honest. And the FA Cup is obviously a massive competition, and winning it and it makes it it's really felt really big, absolutely big. So it just takes pressure off the whole thing. That's what makes it more enjoyable.
And that's Jurgen Klopp speaking ahead of tonight's match. And we can cross over to St Mary's now to get the team news. Here's Richard Newman.
We already knew Liverpool would be without Mohamed Salah and Virgil van Dijk for the trip to Southampton, but Jurgen Klopp makes 9 changes compared with a team which started the FA Cup win over Chelsea. Only goalkeeper Alisson and Ibrahima Konate keep their places. Easier then to read out the starting lineup. Alisson's in goal. It's a back four of Joe Gomez, Joel Matip, Konate and Konstantinos Tsimikas. James Milner, Curtis Jones and Harvey Elliott make up the midfield with a front three of Takumi Minamino, Diogo Jota and Roberto Firmino. There's not even any place on the bench for Trent Alexander-Arnold or Sadio Mane, but Luis Diaz is there. Southampton make 5 changes compared with a team which lost 3-0 at Brentford. Alex McCarthy replaces Fraser Forster in goal. He's out of contract soon. In come Jack Stevens, Mo Alianusi, Lanko and Nathan Teller. Now Liverpool must not lose to keep the title race alive. This one starts at 7:45.
Yeah, well, it must not lose to keep the title race alive. It must not lose to keep the Stevie G wins the title for Liverpool finally narrative arrives. Isn't that right, Carl?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, it's been a crazy season, hasn't it? I mean, 9 changes tonight as well just underlines where they're at the moment. And Van Dijk and Salah obviously picking up knocks at the weekend as well, and they're not actually in the squad this evening as flagged by Jurgen Klopp ahead of the game. So I mean, I hope it does go to the final day, because it's just been such a remarkable season that it feels like at this stage it'd be a pity if it didn't.
I have a feeling, Adrian, just for some reason, as Carl mentioned all this, I have a feeling it just might actually fall tonight.
Oh, really?
It's just, there's so many changes.
No. I am certain, as certain as you can be, that Liverpool got out to thirds against that Southampton team, Johnny. They have fallen to shreds, absolute shreds. These lads, right, have basically close to secured safety since February. Imagine, right? And since then, I see a clip, and I haven't actually heard the clip other than to see it on Twitter, of Jamie Carragher saying that their confidence is shot. It looks to me like they've just packed up shop since February. They beat Spurs and drew with United as far back as that. Since then, would you believe, across March, April and May to date, they've picked up a grand total of 5 points, and 3 of those were against the mighty Arsenal. So I think they've packed up shop. I do think that Liverpool, that team is plenty good to beat the vast majority of other teams in the Premier League that they've put out tonight. I felt actually could have given Al Quivin a run, to be honest with you.
Yeah, Al Quivin, although thankfully he's still young Quivin for his career. Yeah. But what else we got, Carl? Yeah,
other football action tonight, Johnny. Nottingham Forest take a 2-1 lead into the second leg of their English Championship playoff semi-final with Sheffield United. There's a 7:45 start for that one at the City Ground, and the winners will take on Huddersfield Town in the decider to play in the Premier League next season. In Gaelic Games news, the GA and GPA have agreed a framework over expenses for the 2022 season. Inter-county players will receive mileage for 4 training sessions a week, and the limit on squad numbers eligible for expenses has also been eased. The standoff over the expenses issue in recent months saw players refuse to engage in media duties, while some managers also boycotted interviews before and after matches, and a new charter will be put in place for next year. While just to refer back to the Tailteann Cup, the GA president Larry McCarthy says it was never really a possibility to hold the Tailteann Cup final on the same day as the All-Ireland football final. Many have advanced the notion of the new competition's final being the curtain raiser to the biggest game in the football calendar, but the GA has fixed the final for the 9th of July, that's Saturday the 9th, That's 15 days before the All-Ireland decider this year. McCarthy says it may not have received the spotlight it deserves had it been held on the same day.
I'm not necessarily into golf, but this stuff about McIlroy and Mickelson and the whole Saudi thing is mad.
Yeah, so Rory McIlroy says it's sad and unfortunate that Phil Mickelson is not in the field for this week's US PGA Championship. Mickelson won't be defending his title at Southern Hills as he continues his break from the game. The 6-time major winner hasn't featured on tour since controversial comments relating to the Saudi-backed Golf League and Saudi Arabia's human rights record. Speaking ahead of this week's major, McIlroy says he has no desire to get involved with the proposed new tour.
I think now at this point it's just so toxic to talk about that for me it's more of a self-preservation thing. Like I don't need to get involved. I'm not going to get involved. And I love being my own boss. I certainly wouldn't want Greg Norman to be telling me what to do and where to show up and when to be there, and so I'm happy to do my own thing and be my own boss, and that's a big part of it.
Mad stuff.
Yeah, it's I guess Phil Mickelson was initially in the field. He had entered and then he pulled out last week. In other news from the PGA Championship, some of the groupings have been confirmed, and Rory McIlroy's in an absolute blockbuster 3-ball because he's been paired with Tiger Woods and Jordan Spieth for the opening 2 rounds at Southern Hills. Woods meanwhile says he's feeling much stronger as he plays for the second time following the car accident he was involved in last year. Of course, he made his comeback at the Masters to good effect as well last month. And Spieth, of course, is chasing the career Grand Slam, the USPGA, the only major title he is yet to win. As for Shane Lowry, he'll be playing with Brooks Koepka and Adam Scott. Porrick Harrington goes off alongside Stuart Sink and Jason Duffner, while Seamus Power is alongside Russell Knox and Scott Stallings.
Yeah, and just a final one there on Colin Whelan, who's like the starlet UCD striker who's been strongly linked to move away. If not Shamrock Rovers, certainly a move away.
Yeah.
And it's not good news at all for him today.
No, it's not. He's looks set for a spell on the sidelines. That's due to a serious knee injury. The Republic of Ireland under-21 international ruptured his cruciate ligament in last week's win over Finn Harps. Whelan, who has been linked with a move to England and other clubs here in Ireland as well, is now set to miss Ireland's under-21 qualifiers in June as well. And UCD, of course, currently bottom of the SSE Airtricity League Premier Division. So it's a big blow for club and country.
Oh, massive blow, and massive blow for him personally. Thanks, Carl.
Thank you, Johnny.
Thanks, Adrian.
Thanks, Johnny.